we were just playing spades, and we got mail. A lot of us were on watch, and he flipped out. He found out his girlfriend's breaking up with him. His dad's losing the house. His dad's having heart complications, and a bunch of stuff happened pretty much to him at all within while being deployed in Fallujah. At least within that time frame, we stopped getting mortared as much. And sure enough, he walks out just straight out of the tent. And at the time, he like kind of just flicks off the car, saying, "You know what? I don't want to deal with this." Whatever. And he took off, and I'm like, and I go, "Hey, where are you going?" He didn't say nothing, so I kind of get a little pissy too. I'm like, "Hey, where the hell are you going?" And he ignores me, and he just storms off the tent. Before that, I had told everyone to start cleaning their weapon because it gets dirty here, like quick. And sure enough, I started putting all my stuff down. So before I chased my other corporal at the time, he was also part of the reserve unit that he was in. He jumped out before me, and he was out the tent. At this time, when I'm running out the tent, there's no moonlight, so there's no actual illumination whatsoever.
Yeah.
Pitch black, and then I go chasing after him after I put everything down, and then another POC came behind me. And then sure enough, I point my light at him, and all of a sudden I hear the most, like, and I know this sound because it's one of the most unique sounds you could ever hear, is a round being chambered in an M16,
Mm-hmm.
I hear that cold, solid sound as it's being racked into the chamber, and I'm just like, I know that sound.
Mm-hmm.
I look up, and I'm seeing this guy pointing a freaking M16 at me, and he's going, "Get the F away from me, blah, blah, blah. I will shoot you. You don't know what he's going off. He's going on a rant. And I'm just like, what just happened here? Like, I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, yo, you need to calm down. We're having this conversation like in the middle of the night. My boy is literally like in a triangular shape adjacent to him, and he's slowly sneaking up, but he heard him, so he turns the weapon on him, and he shines the light right at him. And we're all both like, we're both maintaining our lights on his face because we're like, fuck this, like if he's gonna take a round at us, at least we're gonna make it like where he doesn't have a good shot. He's gonna shoot at our flashlight over our head, So I'm holding it pretty much over him, like I'm extending my hand out as much as I can, and same as he, and he's trying to calm him down. And sure enough, at this time, the other POC that followed behind me, he's stuck. He doesn't move. He's frozen. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I see like he was able to convince him to kind of bring down his weapon a little bit. And my boy, he jumps on the weapon. As soon as he jumped on the weapon, I sprint towards him. And because as soon as I saw that he jumped on it, for me, it felt like I was never going to get there. My boy told me that I got there, like, it looked like I took 2 steps and I was already like on top of him. To me, I felt like I wasn't moving fast enough.
Of course.
And so now we're on top of, like, we're on top of this guy. We all fall to the floor because my boy takes him down. I jump on top of him. I remove the magazine from the M16, but I still remember that there's still one in the chamber.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remove that one from the chamber. And nothing, because my boy's pressing his foot on top of the M16, where he's kind of like, where the M16's over back of his head, over his shoulder, but at the same time, we're not. He still has his hand on the trigger, on the trigger, yeah. And then finally my PSC jumps on him too, and he's trying to hold it from putting it on fire. Yeah. And I'm trying to rack this thing back on the floor, so I'm trying to take this charging handle from the grinding it on the floor. I could hear it, and sure enough, I wasn't able to grab it fast in like a good point, and the round goes off. And luckily, because of the way the M16 was on the floor, it hit on the bottom of the T barrier, and it just tumbled inside and like underneath the T barrier. And we looked around, we saw that, like, we checked that everybody was okay while we're all still holding this guy down. Silence. Nobody came. Nobody even thought about, like, what's going on. It was around midnight where this happened. Nobody even blinked an eye that was just a round, literally. And we had like a bunch of tents around us too. Yeah. One of our boys was like, "Hey, Marine down, blah blah blah." All of a sudden, we have all these officers coming out of the woodworks and everything, out of their tents and everything, and now they're pointing freaking like their guns at us too. And we're like, "Yo, we already had enough fucking weapons pointing." Like, we're at this point, we're not even being like, "No," like, yeah. Sir went out the window at this point. Yeah. And we finally able to calm him down. Like, he was just sitting there with this like dead eye look, like nothing ever happened. Like, and they asked, and I remember when I first was like, "Why don't you shoot him with what?" We didn't expect him to turn on us like that, and all our weapons were being cleaned. So we had no weapons on him, on us, you know? So we never expect a Marine to turn on you.
Yeah.
But
they asked, why didn't you shoot him?
Yeah. And it's
interesting.
Yeah. And again, like he's one of our Marines.
So was that near your...
Actually, it was in the beginning of the rotation.
Yeah.
Of the second...
Of their rotation.
Of their rotation.
Yeah.
So
how did that get resolved?
Well, the way the Marine Corps always handles everything, they made us write statements and everything, and then he got sent back to his unit.
Okay. Interesting.
He was going to get kicked out of the Marine Corps, and then even then, we just had like half a day off. That's it. And then we went back to work.
Okay.
And then whatever, and we just continued on. And then I guess it turns out that this guy also ended up threatening his command when he went back in his reserve unit.
Yeah.
And he was going to go kill his staff leadership. And because his dad knew that he had weapons, he called the MPs and based that, hey, my son's going to come in, he's going to try to kill his command.
That's interesting.
Pretty much because NYPD trains right in front of that unit. They were waiting for him. And they picked him up.
Wow, man. Fucking... That's something, you know, and that's just one of those things that, like, you never expect, right? And you never... I was listening to a podcast today from a guy who considers himself a student of war, right? And one of the questions that the Michael Gervais, the podcast host, was asking was, how do you get ready for those moments that you never trained for, right? Because you train for so much. Yeah. There is so much stuff you train for, and then what you don't train for is usually what happens in life. And that, you know, that mindset translates well into, you know, why we're here today. Because we don't train for life. We don't train for transition. We don't train to have a gun pointed at us by our own people, you know. And so that fight or flight moment, you know, what do? When you guys started shining the lights in front of his face and confusing him, that's all reaction.
Yeah.
It's all reaction. That's all just pure reaction. So that's cool. I mean, it's cool that you walked away from that. That definitely opens your eyes to the mindset of, like, we might all be on the same team, but we're not all on the same mindset. Yeah. That's crazy.
So it's interesting. I think that's why that's where where later on I kind of understand that if somebody's going through something and not everyone's situation is always the same, you know. Just because you're going through something doesn't mean it's the same as someone else might be going through something.
Yeah,
you know. Their experiences may vary, you know.
Yeah.
So,
which is a perfect segue because you weren't forced out; it was an option, and so let's actually talk about that, because that mindset. I mean, the epitome of getting back on the horse is sitting right here in front of me. Yeah. And so Fallujah ends. At what point in the Marine Corps are you like, I gotta go back home? I can't do this anymore.
Well, I think it's when I went back on leave. So I come back home and I get the same freaking questions. Like, did I kill anybody?
Of course.
Am I okay? Do you have the PTSD?
The PTSD, yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm good to go. I'm solid, you know. And my mom, she's, like I said at the time, my mom has been going through her own stuff as well. You know, just dealing with, like, people fucking her over. You know, my stepdad being unsupportive and just kind of also leaving her as well. So it became a big issue, you know. And to me, she tried to put this front that everything was okay.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I started, until when she would leave the room and a lot of her friends would tell me, yeah, your mom's been sick, like, ever since you've been out there, like, because there was time that I would call her and I would have to hang up immediately because we would get like a motor drop or something, and I never wanted her to hear the alarms going off either.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be like, hey, let me call you back before the alarms went off. Mm-hmm. Like, I would hear the explosion. I'm like, oh no, somebody. I used to say, oh, that's us going out,
mm-hmm.
just to kind of keep her at ease. And they would tell me that, like, yeah, she's been getting sick. She's been dealing with a lot of depression, And I realized that me deploying was what was making her sick.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make a decision at that point. Do I stay in or do I get out? And this is where kind of my staff sergeant comes in too. He saw that I came back and I was just like all over the place. I think it also started because of the way we got our welcoming home. I guess it was different for single Marines or Marines that don't have money, because there's also a difference in people that they go into the Marine Corps. Their family might have money and they're able to travel versus like a lot of other families that don't. Like especially if you're in North Carolina, they're not gonna be able to pay that like $500-$600 like flight just to go to North Carolina, you know. And my mom was one of those, and so I show up home, and at the same time, I remember like feeling that experience. Like the only person that was greeting me were 2 or 3 members of my old platoon that stayed behind because they got hurt or they were not deployable, and I saw that look on their face of like they're happy to see me, but at the same time, they're not happy to see me because I could see that they missed out on an experience that they weren't able to do.
Yeah.
And I saw that in their face. The way they talked to me was so different, you know, compared to those that deployed with me. We had war stories about a bunch of shit that happened when we were over there.
Yeah.
And it was so different. You could feel the atmosphere was different. And so for me, I made it a point where every time, like, I started welcoming everybody. I was like, yo, as soon as you guys are done with here, just go to my room, grab some beers. I've got a bunch. I know they're telling you not supposed to, fuck them.
Yeah.
Just come over, whatever. And I was also pissed off because they didn't have none of our rooms ready, knowing that we're coming. So we're already pissed off, and we're just pretty much letting out steam the first two weeks and stuff, just wilding out, being just all over the freaking place, you know.
Yeah.
I remember one of our classes was all like, when you go back to your families, you're no longer, remember, if you have kids, you're no longer the head of the household. Make sure you're patient. And I remember this one, like, don't have relations with your girlfriend, wife, whatever you have. Nobody ever listens to those because they're like, you might be you have a lot of built up. Anyways. And I remember going back to this unit, and it was like, my staff sergeant, he saw that something was bothering me, you know. He saw my mindset had changed. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just that because I was more about, I wanted to train harder. I wanted to keep training these guys to be harder. And I was burning out a lot of our guys too. At the same time, I was getting fed up with the bullshit. Like, oh, we have to go do this Mando training about whatever's, or Mando training on this. And I was not having it. I was just like, no, this is not. I'm all like, we need to train to be faster. We need to we need to do more stuff. We need to be able to be more adaptable to different fields. And I was trying to bring that to the table, but like a lot of our new lieutenants, because I was in a new platoon now. New lieutenant, new staff sergeant weren't listening to anything we had to say. I remember my staff sergeants are like, why are you so mad? Like, why are you so angry again? Like, he saw that, like, why are you angry again? I'm like, I don't know. I told him, I really don't know why. And he thought, like, and same conversation. It's interesting that happens, like, almost 2 years later. He goes, like, why don't you become a drill instructor? I thought it was funny. He wanted me to stay in. I know he was disappointed that I left, but he didn't know the full story of why I needed to leave.
Yeah.
On one hand, I had re-enlistment orders on one side, and at the same time, I knew I had to deal with talking back and forth with my family and everything. I finally decided, you know what, I need to do what's best for my family, not because I want to, because I have to.
Yeah. Now, we didn't really touch on the relationship between you and your mom prior to this decision. And I think it's important because, and it's brief, I'll briefly bring it up, because you and I are a lot alike, where I did not have mutual respect for my mother. And, you know, I would say still similar to this day, but it's a little bit different. I'm a little bit older. But at that time, you grew up with, I don't want to say no respect, but not the respect that other kids have for their parents. Yeah. So at this point, you're about to make this decision, this really big decision of getting out to go help and support a person that you really didn't have a bond with, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's because I guess I saw because I remember going